Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm playing it. Can you hear it?
start it so that I can tell you if it's audible.
Actually, I have started it.
We can't hear it. Can anyone hear it?
Oh,
No, no, I can't either.
okay, sir. Actually, I don't think that's possible because I'm playing it from my phone.
Okay.
I can hear it, but you
So if you
can't.
can if you can send that clip to me, let me see if I can play it.
Yes, yes, I will.
I haven't. So how are you going to send it? Hi, Dehini and Tasneem. What happened? All of you are dead from the research project.
So pardon please, because of network issue, I couldn't accumulate what you are saying.
So what I'm saying is that because of research project, all of you are dead or what? Only three or
No,
four
sir, we
people
have
are
already submitted by 25th or 26th, I guess.
right.
And today
So
is 27, right? So we already have submitted our research projects.
so why are people not coming to the class? At the end of it?
So because
Rushi dropped the message. Uh, yes. Yeah, Rushi, you say.
because we have dropped the burden and we are flying up above the sky right now.
You are high. Oh,
Yeah, yes, sir.
Definitely has.
so why did it become so stressful this time?
Sir, one reason is that because we didn't know if we had to repeat what we did last time, like last time we did research proposals as our project. But this time we weren't given clear instruction if
What?
we have to, yeah, we have to do the research proposal or we need to
To
write a
research.
paper in itself, like an essay
Right.
or something. So at the end, I just wrote an essay on whatever area I, my guide decided upon. So
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Dehini, you have to say something.
So another reason, I mean, for me was that this time I wanted to do very well in the paper, and I wanted to, research. I mean, not the way that I have in the past semester, but I mean, with all the preparations. But we only had month, and the first half of the month was with exams, and then the second half of the month went into a novel which I couldn't complete. So it was just too much, and I felt that we couldn't justify our paper as we should have had. So after 2 days of constant writing, like more than 3,000, sorry, more than 2,500 words, we are like, okay, done. We don't want to do anything else. And just what, I mean, that's why I saw maybe less attendance in the class.
Okay. Yeah, so Madhumita was here, right? And she has gone back. Yeah, what? Okay.
Sir, what happened with me was even more tragic.
That's
On the on the last day of submission, my file got corrupted. Right. So
So
instead of the
always keep a backup. Make it as a backup.
yeah, I learned it the hard way. And
Yeah.
instead of my content, everything was turned into hashtags.
हाँ, scrambled हो गया होगा, corrupt हो गया.
And then I had to write everything from the scratch.
Hmm. Yeah, so Madhumita, what are you doing?
Hello, sir. Actually, I need to tell him your email ID, but I don't know your email ID.
Okay, here it is. I will. But why? Where is he? क्या कर रहा है वो? Outside means.
He is.
I've messaged my email ID. तो बाहर है यानी कहाँ है सोहन?
He's actually outside. He is probably in a football ground or somewhere.
Okay. अच्छा 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 अच्छा. वो अभी चल रहा है उसका.
Good afternoon all. Today me and
Okay, so I'm sharing the screen. Right. ये बड़े लोग ऐसा करते हैं. प्राइम मिनिस्टर नहीं आ सकते तो ऑडियो क्लिप भेज देते हैं.
Sir, modern
Good
world
evening. I'm
has a
Yasin
replica of
on
everything.
translating a Tamil poem by A.K. Ramanujan.
Okay,
A.K.
so
Ramanujan was a
can you hear what
bilingual
is?
poet
poet
and
and
also
also
uh, translator,
translator
um,
um,
and
and
uh,
uh,
also he
also
was
he
a
was a
um,
um,
translator and
translator and
also an
also an
essayist.
essayist.
He
He
started
started
discussing his
discussing his
essay
essay
by
by
asking a
asking a
question: how
question:
does
how
one
does one
translate a
translate a
poem
poem
from
from
another
another
time,
time,
another
another
culture, and
culture, and
another
another
language?
language?
His
His
poems he
poems he
translated
translated
in
in
Tamil
Tamil
were
were
written
written
2000 years
2000 years
ago in the
ago in the
corner of
corner of
South
South
India
India
in
in
Dravidian
Dravidian
language.
language.
Over
Over
2000
2000
uh, Tamil
Tamil
poems of
poems of
different
different
lengths
lengths
and by
and by
over
over
400
400
poets.
poets.
and arranged in nine anthologies survive various of politics and wars, change of tastes and religion and culture. The major subject in the paper is about translation, the transport of poems from classical Tamil to modern English, and he also discussed the hazards and the damages in transit, the secret parts, and also the lucky bypasses. The major chief or the chief difficulty he discussed first was the translation. Is its translation the chief difficulty of the translation is its impossibility, where he gave an example from a Tamil poem Ainkunu Nuru um, in the modern transcript, and it's the poem is அன்னை வழி வேண்டும் அன்னை நாம் பாட்டுப்பாய் தேன் மயங்கும் பாலினும் இன அவர் நாய் தூவெள்ளை குவல் கிலா மானும் எண்ணிக்கையில் கலிலி நிறை. And that's he discusses how to translate this poem. Um, and he first discussed translating this poem by dividing with units, dividing it into units of translation and taking down sounds. He says that Tamil has six nasal sounds: a bilabial, a dental, an alveolar, a retroflex, a palatal, and a velar, and three of which is not in English. So he asks, how shall we translate a six-way system into a three-way system in English? He Tamil as long and short vowels, and English have diphthongs and glides. Tamil have double consonants that occurs in English only across in very certain phrases. Tamil have no initial consonant clusters. English abound in them.
Sir, it stopped playing.
Yeah, he's not audible. Let me try once again.
Has a long tradition of second syllable consonant rhymes.
Now,
The above poem, the first, second,
Yes,
and
he's audible.
have sound as the second consonant in the line initial words anne, ten, and man. Um, um, End rhymes in Tamil are modern innovations, just as the second syllable rhymes in the English. The tradition of one poetry would be the innovation of another. Ramanujan added. Mm. When we look at the grammar briefly, the poem
It
it
is
is
like
like
this.
this.
Mother
Mother
may
may
desire
desire
to
to
listen,
listen,
mother.
mother.
Our
Our
garden
garden
honey
honey
mixed
mixed
with
with
milk
milk
and
and
sweeter.
sweeter.
His
His
land.
land.
Translation.
Translation.
uh, in metrical system, where meter is the second order of organizing of the sound system of language, and partakes of all the above problems and some more. Tamil meter depends on the presence of long vowels and double consonants. One closed and one open syllables defined by such vowels and consonants. Um, but sorry. Okay. As example, he said in the first word of the above poem, Annai, the first syllable is heavy because it is closed, like un. And the second is heavy because it has a long vowel, nay. Uh, Even like rhyme, they do not have the same vowels in different languages. Uh, in case of English, has a long tradition of n rhymes, but Tamil has a long tradition of second syllable consonant rhymes. The above poem, the first, second, and fourth lines have sound as the second consonant in the line initial words anne, ten, and man. Um, End rhymes in Tamil are modern innovations, just as the second syllable rhymes in the English. The tradition of one poetry would be the innovation of another. Ramanujan added. When we look at the grammar briefly, the poem, if we translate word to word, it is like this: Mother may leave desire to listen, mother. Our garden honey mixed with milk than sweeter. His lambs leaves whole slow. Animal have drunk, and the leftover muddied water. But what the real or the literal translation is about what she says is like to her girlfriend when she returned from the hills. Bless you, friend, listen. Sweeter than milk mixed with honey from our gardens is the leftover water in his lands, low in the water holes covered with leaves and muddied by animals. So he says that Tamil has no capular verb for equational sentence in the present tense. In English, you can say Tom is teaching. No degree of comparison in adjective as in English. Sweet, sweeter, sweetest. No article like a and the and so on. Tamil expresses semantic.
Is he audible? He is all of a sudden.
No, sir. He stopped talking.
Can't hear his. What happened?
Good afternoon. Today, me and Madhumita is presenting on the essay Use a gender for every noun. But English doesn't have that. Even Richard, the anthropologist, used for atheism into ascending.
They
They
would
would
come
come
out
out
as
as
arguments for
arguments for
God in
God in
ascending.
ascending.
So
So
no
no
translation
translation
can be
can be
literal
literal
or
or
word
word
for
for
word.
word.
He
He
says
says
the
the
only
only
possible
possible
translation is a
translation is a
free
free
one.
one. Um,
Tamil
Tamil
syntax
syntax
is
is
most
most
left
left
branching.
branching.
English
English
syntax
syntax
is
is
by
by
large
large
right
right
vote,
vote,
like a
like a
man
man
who
who
come
come
from
from
Michigan
Michigan
would
would
be
be
uh, Michigan
Michigan
come
come
from which is
from
a
which is a
Boston's
Boston's
who man.
human.
In
In
Tamil,
Tamil,
it will
it
be
will be
left
left
branch
branch
like
like
Michigan.
Michigan,
Michiganil
Michiganil
irundu
irundu
vanda
vanda
Manidan.
Manidan.
The
The
Tamil
Tamil
sentence is a
sentence is a
mirror.
mirror.
We can
We
see the
can say
Tamil
the Tamil
sentence is a
sentence is a
mirror
mirror
image of the
image of the
English one.
English one.
Uh,
Uh,
like
like
what
what
is
is
A,
A,
B,
B,
C, D,
C, D,
E
E.
in one
In
would
one
be
would be
E, D,
E,
C,
D,
B,
C,
A
B,
in
A in
Tamil.
Tamil.
This would
This would
also
also
true.
true.
Also
Also
true.
true.
So many
So
other
many other
languages also
languages also
possess the
possess the
same
same
thing
thing
as
as
mirroring,
mirroring,
like
like
Turkish,
Turkish,
Japanese,
Japanese,
Welsh, and
Welsh, and
also
also
uh,
uh,
are
are
also
also
this
this
left
left
branching
branching.
languages. English very rarely have this left branching possibilities, but there are also writers who prefer to use this for special effects, like Hopkins and Dylan Thomas use this uh, for possibilities stunningly. We see this in Thomas' refusal to mount the death by fire of a child in London, where Wilson and Welsh is a left branching language. Hopkins and Thomas, the leftward syntax is employed for a special poetic effects. In Tamil poetry, the leftward syntax is not eccentric, but a part of everyday natural speech. What is he says that what is everyday in one language must be translated by what is everyday in the target language also, and what is eccentric must find equally eccentric equivalent. He says that the best word in the best order, and the best order of two languages are the mirror image of the each other. Um, he continues the essay by asking what is a translator to do. He says many of his devices are made in order to mimic closely the syntactic suspense of the original. Um, he says most some of the language will be having a um, um, language will be cultural specific. When it is translated, these collocations and paradigms make for metonyms and metaphors multiple, having this multiple contextual meanings, clusters special to each languages, quite it which makes it quite untranslatable into another languages. That's one of the drawbacks he point out. Mm, when it's come to this Tamil poetic tradition, the poetic tradition having the ordering of different genres with different functions uh, in the culture. Like Tamil classical poetry would call them poem and interior or akkam poem. A poem would about love and its different phases, contrasted to the exterior or Puram poems, which is public poems, which is a public poem. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay, which is a public uh, uh, used in usually public poems about the war, and these public poems people major themes would be war, society, poverty of poets, the death of heroes and sons, um, and so on. Um, the Tamil poetic tradition uses a entire lexinomy. They are having a five landscapes of Tamil area characterized by hills, seashore, agricultural areas, wastelands, and pastoral fields, each with its forms of life, but natural and cultural, trees, animal, tribes, customs, arts, and instruments. All these become a part of a symbolic chord in the poetry. Every landscape, each and every landscape is associated with a mood or phase of love or war. Each landscape or mood is also associated with a poem or poetry.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's have his. There is connection issue at my end. Anyway, Madhumita, where are you starting from? From which portion?
Yes, I will start from page number 224 on the
Oh,
last
right.
paragraph.
Yeah, I think that is where he has come. Yeah.
Yes. So he has talked about the Kurinji poems. Kurinji
Right.
is the that blue flower that's found in the hills, and till now, in the poem, I'll just give a brief. Um, like in the whole essay, he is emphasizing upon the importance of sounds in poems. So when a translator is translating a poem, he's essentially producing another poem. So in the process, he is becoming a poet, and that is very different from when a translator is translating a novel, because you just have to transport the meaning. So there's not much emphasis on sounds, the palpability of sounds. It's just the meaning transfer. So Constance Garnett, for example, if she is translating a Dostoevsky poem, she's just a translator. But if someone is um, translating Baudelaire's poem, then he is in essence a poet, because we have to reproduce from one language system the entire phonology and the syntax and semantics. Everything has to be transported into another medium, another language. And here we are talking about translating a Tamil poem from around 2000 years ago, and written by around 420 poets. So it's a classical Tamil which was coexisting in India with another classical language which was Sanskrit. And at that time we had other classical languages throughout the world, Latin, Greek, and then there was Hebrew. So we are translating a poem from a system of poems, from a language from a very different time into this time, which is the contemporary time. So how do we do that? So AK Ramanujan helps us understand that process through the example of translating one poem, which is this poem from Ain Kurunuru. Now, most of you might not know Tamil, but you can spot the sounds when you translate from a poem into English. You have to pay attention to the rhymes. Now, how do you transport rhyme from one language to another? In English, we have end rhymes. I mean, there are middle rhymes, but middle rhymes are a kind of innovation. But in Tamil, we have middle rhymes. The sounds in the middle of the sentence.
I think there is some problem with your audio, Madhu. We can't hear you clearly.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. Another another problem is that English is English is a right branching language system, while the language system in Tamil is left branching. So there, these all systemic differences make it difficult for us to translate a poem. This poem is a love poem. So he has explained us that hills are related to the word kurinji, which is a blue flower, and it is related to the feeling of love. And then there are other landscapes like seashores, agricultural areas, wastelands, pastoral fields. So every language has a mood associated with it, a feeling associated with it. So this is a poem about love. Um, I want you to imagine a water body. It's filled with water, but it is covered with leaves. So when you look at it from the outside, like lotus leaves without the lotus, it's fully green. And then you have an animal which has dirt all over it, dust all over it, and that animal is coming, and he dips his feet into the water. So his feet touches the leaves and then it enters the water. So basically this poem is about a young woman, a woman who was innocent until now, but she discovers uh, sex. That is the poem this is about. And he has translated it into um, yes, what she said to her girlfriend when she returned from the hills. Bless you, friend, listen, sweeter than milk mixed with honey from our gardens is leftover water in his land, low in the waterholes covered with leaves and muddied by animals. The mud is everything dirty that she has right now found out, and milk and honey is everything sweet and innocent that she was until now. So this is how a very intimate poem is translated from Tamil, ancient classical Tamil to modern English. From huh, one second. there's a there's a I don't know how many of you know about it. I think most people know about ASMR, autonomous sensory meridian response. ASMR videos are getting really popular these days on YouTube. So it's like it's a young girl who is talking not necessarily seductively, but she uses whispering sounds and a lot of windy sounds, and she speaks the words very softly, so that every syllable that she utters kind of becomes very pleasurable to listen to, especially if you listen to it with headphones. um, so there is a pleasure associated with listening, and there is also a pleasure associated with speaking, and that is a pleasure that we are talking about in a poem. Every syllable, every consonant that you utter, um, there's a pleasure you derive from it, which is a very reason why you can read a novel in silence. But when you read a poem in silence, you're essentially mutilating it. A poem should never be read in silence. So that is the whole uh, pleasure, the palpability that you get when your lips touch, when your tongue touches um, the teeth, is what he is trying to tell us. That sort of a pleasure system essentially has to be transported from one language to another language of another era. um, Excuse me. Yes, so he also talks about Agam poems and Puram poems. So Agam poems are Agam means in Tamil it means inside, and Puram means outside. So what is inside a house is love, and what is outside a house is war. So a lot of poets, including Kapilar, who wrote this poem, um, have written Agam poems to denote love and Puram poems to denote war. Um, so yeah, we have to translate not just the Tamil language, but inside the Tamil language there is an art language, the poetry language, which has to be translated. um, and somewhere in the essay he also talks about how um, grammar constraints uh, grammar constraints what can be said directly and what can be left unsaid. I'll give you an example. In Urdu, there is a phrase, and I'm not very sure about it. Is a phrase "tashrif rakhiye." Please, so you're welcoming someone, you say "tashrif rakhiye." If you were to literally translate it into English, it would be sort of like "keep your butt here" or "put your butts here," and it's like it's essentially you are it becomes very vulgar if you translate it like directly. So that is the intricacies of translation. And sometimes there are some phrases in one language or one culture that can seem very offensive in another culture. For instance, um, there's a phrase in North India which goes like "sali adi gharwali." I don't know if it's just a like it's a light phrase or if they seriously say it, but if you translate it and tell it to someone else, they might probably not take it seriously. So that's what he means. I mean, they might get take it offensively. So that's what he means when he says that grammar constrains what can be said directly and what can be left unsaid. Um, there's an entropy change also that is taking place. For instance, we studied about when a particular when a lot of molecules from um, one medium are to be transported into another medium, then the arrangement changes. If H2 molecules have to go from, excuse me, to go from like liquid state to solid state, the H2O molecules have to come closer. So the permutation change that is taking place among the molecules is what we have to pay attention to. So it's that also has to be preserved, and the meaning also has to be preserved. It has to remain H2O molecules, but it's technically impossible for the H2O molecules to be just as close in the liquid state as they are in the solid state. So that is what he talks about. And he also talks about the order of themes. If English is a right branching system and Tamil is a left branching system, then certain words come before, and that is why they have their effect. But in English, when you translate it, that's not possible. Um, yes, you don't translate a poem; you translate the entire bodies of poetries. So there are allusions, there are contrasts, like in Ain Kurunuru, Agam poems, Puram poem. If you're translating just one Agam poem, but you need to know about what most Agam poems are about, even if you have to translate just one Agam poem. Um, yes. Then he says, what makes translation possible? Universals. Something has to be common in two languages. Something more than just something universal has to be common in two languages that are very, very different from each other. So that is the universals that we are talking about. The second is interiorized contexts. So when you are taking a Tamil poem, you are taking it from maybe some age old manuscript from some archive in some distant library, and um, along with the poems there are colophons, and then there might be hypertexts, explanations, that will help you, because you don't know about the exact culture of that time. And translation requires more than just language. You need a greater context of culture, and these things can be understood from the system of like hypertexts and hyperlinks, or colophons or whatever. Commentaries, yes. um Systematicity. Then the next point is the third point on page number 230 is systematicity, which is exactly what we talked about. Like from one language system, you are transporting something into another language system. So you have to not translate just one poem, but the entire system. You have to be aware of it. Um, and structural mimicry is also something we have already discussed, that we cannot just translate single words, um, because the meaning of a sentence in English is like it's difficult to actually go by, um, because the prepositions and the postpositions and the nouns, they're all differently, uh, uh, they all interact very differently in two sentences from two different languages. So you can't translate just single words, you have to translate whole sentences, whole phrases. You can't just translate metrical units, but you have to translate the whole rhythm. Textures are harder to translate than structures. That is why nothing less than a poem can translate another. It's like uh, a poem is lost in translation. Similarly, a poem is lost in, yes. So, like I said, if a translator were to translate a poem, he's essentially a poet, because he's creating a new poem. He's not just representing, but he is representing the poem. Yes. And then now, one poem can have a lot of translations. That means that it has a lot of um, other poems that are similar to it. And he ends it by saying that. He gives a small example of a Chinese emperor. He has asked his engineers to build a tunnel under a mountain. So the engineers say that if we are to save time, then we'll have to start digging the tunnels from two different ends, so that the two tunnels can meet midway, and our one tunnel will be finally ready. So the emperor says, what if they don't meet? So the engineers say, then we will have, um, yes, the engineers say, what if the tunnels don't meet? And the emperor says, then we will have two tunnels instead of one. So if two people are trying to translate a poem and they are not able to do it exactly, but still you have two poems. So yes, yes, I think that's the whole essay. Yes.
Right. Anything anyone has to say about this? See, A.K. Ramanujan is one of the best translators in India, and this is one of the best statements or most comprehensive statement on the process of translation. What is at stake, what is involved, what does it take to translate, right? So this essay is a kind of overview of most of the important points that what happens in translation, what is left out, what do you have to do, and so on and so forth. Anything, any comments, observations, questions?
Sir, I thought some that it was very interesting that in the beginning Ramanujan said in the essay that we had to we have to know that translating from Tamil to English is impossible, and we have to start from there.
Oh,
So yeah, I found it very
oh,
interesting.
right. And then it tells us in case you have to, then what do you have to do, right?
Yes, sir. Is to
What
start
what
with
is
the
involved in that? Yeah.
yeah, to start with a pessimistic note and to uh,
He says he uses metaphor from Marvel. Uh, that of love, and like all love, it is begotten by despair upon impossibility. From which poem is he quoting? Any idea? You have read Andrew Marvel's poems? Yes, no. Oh, no.
no, sir.
Andrew Marvel, you haven't read anything? जिन लोगों ने फर्स्ट ईयर हमारे यहाँ से किया है, तस्नीम, डू यू रिमेम्बर एंड्रू मार्वल,
Yeah, sir.
metaphysical
It's
poetry?
about metaphysical poems.
Yes. So first semester में एक poem थी called To His Coy Mistress.
Yeah.
याद है?
Yeah, sir. I remember. Yeah.
तो उसमें से ये लाइन ली है उसने.
Okay.
Love is my product is love of uh, uh, despair upon impossibility. Right, so it is despair upon him, but it's love, right? And all love is like that. So what do you have to say about that? Translation is like love, and like all love, it is produced by despair, begotten by despair upon impossibility. Questions, queries?
Sir, I have one question
Yeah.
regarding this essay
Oh,
that um, on page number 222.
okay.
Right. So Ramanujan said that the Tamil sentence is the mirror image of the English one.
Hmm.
So why he didn't mention the word translation as he
Yeah.
used the word mirror image for
He's not saying translation.
Englishman.
He's talking about structure of sentences, right? હું ઘરે ગયો. What would that translate as in English?
I went home.
I went home. So went comes after I, right? So verb, object, SVO is the structure of English, while Gujarati is SOV, right? And all postpositions become prepositions in English become postpositions in Gujarati or Tamil, right? So it is in that sense. If you look at mirror, then the right hand becomes left hand, right? So right branching is a particular structure. Uh, for example, look at page number 222. The man who came from Michigan is called right branching. The man who came from Michigan. So how will you translate it into Gujarati? मैन हु केम फ्रॉम मिशिगन, उसका गुजराती करोगे तो क्या होगा और हिंदी करोगे तो क्या होगा?
એ માણસ જે મિશિગન થી આવ્યો वो
એવું
इंसान
કેવું
जो
મિશિગન થી આવેલો માણસ,
हाँ मिशिगन થી આવેલો માણસ
એટલે
और मिशिगन
મિશિગન
से
which
आया
is
हुआ
it becomes EDCBA, right? મિશિગન થી આવેલો માણસ, right? So even Gujarati and English are mirror language. Their structures mirror each other. So what happens that Gujarati and Tamil are left branching languages. So when you, or Hindi is also, all Indian languages are probably left branching. English is right branching, right? And when you use left branching uh, in English, then it becomes a kind of deviation, like a refusal to mourn the death by fire of a child in London, right? This is a left branching in English, but that is not used normally. So most of the effects of poem are effects that are produced structurally by the poem. And when you translate it into structure which is mirror opposite, there is bound to be a problem. So structural lack of equivalence is what he is talking about. Syntactic difference. And you have studied syntax, right? सिंटैक्स पढ़ रहे हो ना आप लोग? हाँ ना?
यस सर।
तो आपको लेफ्ट ब्रांचिंग राइट ब्रांचिंग पता नहीं? तो लेफ्ट का राइट हो जाता है, राइट का लेफ्ट हो जाता है.
Sir, we know the order of the subject, verb, object changes, but we didn't know this term, like left branching and right branching.
So it is called left branching, right branching. So Tamil syntax, Gujarati, Hindi, Marathi, Bengali syntax is left branching. English is right branching. So when you translate, you are violating the structural order of the sentence. Now that shouldn't be a problem about when it comes to man who comes from Michigan, but in a poem it becomes big problem, right? And sometimes he says that I use, if you look at page 223, I try to mimic closely the syntactic suspense of the original, right? Of Tamil into English, and by reversing that word order. So if you look at this poem on page 221, what she said to her girlfriend when she returned from the hills, bless you friend, listen, sweeter than milk mixed with honey from our gardens is the leftover water in his land. Instead of saying that the leftover water in his land is sweeter than milk mixed with honey, he says sweeter than milk mixed with honey from our garden is the leftover water in his land, low in the water holes covered with leaves and muddied by animals. उसके बगीचे का पानी बहुत मीठा था मगर उसमें बहुत ही कीचड़ था, ऐसे वो कह रही है. So what is she implying? Any idea? As students of literature, she is telling this to her girlfriend. मैं उसके बगीचे में गई थी, वहां पे उसका पानी जो था ना बहुत मीठा था मगर बहुत सारा कीचड़ था. What is she implying?
Hello, sir. I talked about it during the presentation that
So what does it imply?
it implies
Madhumita?
the transition from innocence, so milk and the sweetness of innocence of a young girl gets transitioned into um, the muddied uh, water muddied by animals.
Okay.
So
But a
she
very but she's what is she talking about? She's talking about something very banal. ये तो symbolic meaning कहा आपने. But she is talking about something which is very banal and ordinary. Symbolic meaning is correct, what you said. Any ideas? What is she talking about? Let me see how good students of literature you are.
Sir, can you please repeat?
What is she talking about in very plain terms? ये symbolic meaning की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ मैं. But at implied, what is she trying to imply? Madhumita says that it's about my milk and honey is symbol of her innocence and getting muddied is transitioning to puberty or something. ये बहुत बड़ी symbolic बातें कर रही है मगर actually she is saying something very mundane. What is she talking about?
she's talking about her discovery of sex and love with another
वो
man.
कैसे how is she talking about discovery of sex? उसमें
So
sex
because
कहाँ आया उसने जो describe किया है उसमें.
it is like even Ramanujan talks about it, but if you like think about it, like the imagery is what is similar both in Tamil and Malayalam. Sorry, Tamil and English. The imagery of the
But discovery of sex, how is it? How can you say it is about discovery of sex?
So, is it about agricultural area? Because South Asia is
Agriculture or
most.
sex? Is it
No,
about
no, no.
agriculture?
Because South is mostly relevant within the agriculture and all. That's why.
Okay. So the poem is about agriculture, but Madhumita says that it's about discovery of
Yeah, it's
sex.
not about the agriculture, but somehow location would be a landscape, especially landscape.
लैंडस्केप आता है पेड़ पौधे वाला वो हमेशा एग्रीकल्चर होता है क्या?
Right.
ये बातें करती है. What makes you think Madhumita that she is talking about discovery of sex?
sir, like it's very it's visible, like the imagery is so strong. like
What is
like
so strong about she is saying कि उसके यहाँ का पानी है ना it's like milk mixed with honey from our garden. उतना मीठा पानी है उसके बगीचे का और उसमें जानवर जाते हैं इसलिए बहुत कीचड़ हो गया ऐसे कह रही है वो. तो उसमें strong imagery और सब कहाँ आ गया?
sir, it's the water hole is covered with leaves.
Hmm.
Okay.
So
In very raw terms, the water hole covered with leaf, like when an animal is stepping his hoof on those leaves and it's splitting the water at that exact point. It's I don't know how much more.
Anyone else wants to try? Dehini, Rushi, Riva.
सर मुझे कब से लाइन नहीं मिल रही है सर.
Page number 221. And to repeat my questions, how do you read this meaning of sexual discovery and transitioning from puberty and blah blah blah? ये सब बड़ी बड़ी वो तो इतना ही कह रही है अपने दोस्त को कि उसके बगीचे में जो पानी है ना वाटर होल का, वो मिल्क एंड हनी से भी ज्यादा मीठा है. And that water hole is covered with leaves and muddied with by animals. तो उसमें डिस्कवरी ऑफ सेक्स और एग्रीकल्चर और क्या क्या कहाँ से आ गया. तो मधुमिता ने कहा कि ये जो बहुत रॉ इमेजरी है वाटर होल्स के ऊपर एनिमल्स के हूफ डालते हैं, तो दैट इज इंडिकेशन ऑफ सेक्स, ऐसा कुछ कह रही है. Okay, so
Sir,
here, okay,
another another explanation can be that like if you if like if you know that these landscapes are related to love in Tamil poetry. So like hills are related to love and the other landscapes are related to war. So if you see these landscapes and these flowers, then
symbolic.
it's symbolic of these feelings.
I completely get that, and that interpretation I have accepted. That is the first interpretation you have given of symbols in the poem. But I'm saying she is saying something discovery of sex in a very obvious manner, though it is nowhere said so. And that obviousness comes from the fact is that nobody asked her how did she get dirty. उसके कपड़े क्यों खराब हो गए ऐसे पूछा होगा उसके पूछने. Her friend has not even asked why your clothes are dirty and why are you when you are coming from his land your clothes are dirty, right? So even without asking she is providing an explanation that water in his land water holes are so sweet but they are muddied by animals, so that's how I got dirty. समझे आप? So by implication, and it's like dhanyar, right? It is like dhwani of the poem. The dhwani is that it indicates that she has gone to that man's place and she is coming back all muddied. And without asking for explanation, she is providing a lousy explanation, right? Which indicates her sexual act. He got dirty because they had sex in that land. But she is coming up with this story. Right? So the meaning lies at the level of implicatures. Dhwani. The situational implicatures. So symbolically, yes, all those meanings that Madhumita said are completely correct. Whether those flowers or milk and honey to muddiedness, all that is true. But without going into symbolic interpretation, also the situational context itself is implies a sexual encounter, right? किसी को कुछ पूछना है, कहना है? Not understood what I'm saying? Yeah, understood. हाँ ना, Understood or not understood? Kya?
Yes.
Okay. So that is what I was asking. Yeah.
सर दो
उसको
मिनट के लिए ना वो
सिंपल इम्प्लीकेशन है उसके दोस्त ने तो कुछ पूछा नहीं वो उस she has come from that man's land and she is all muddied, right? And what she is saying that water hole का पानी ही बहुत मीठा है इसलिए मैं वहां पे पानी पीने गई थी मगर वो कादव कीचड़ लग गया मुझे ऐसा कहना चाहती है but what it means is that she has had sex with that man. Right? Situational implicature is what I'm talking. I'm not talking about symbolic meanings which are correct, right? Which are obviously correct. Clear? So, you can read this poem as well, 225. What her mother said, उसकी माँ ने फिर क्या कहा? ये सब हो जाने के बाद क्या हो? If a calving cow chewed up her purslane creeper growing near the house, she would throw the ball to the ground, push away the doll, and beat herself on her pretty tummy. My little girl who knows how to do things. With a look tender as a doe, she would refuse the milk mixed with honey. Her foster mother and I would bring. She would sob and cry. ऐसी थी वो बचपन में. Yet today, trusting the lies of a black-bearded man, she has gone through the wilderness laughing, they say, showing her white teeth like new buds on a palm tree. So what do you make of this poem? बचपन में अगर कोई छोट गाय भी उसका कुछ पत्ता खा जाती थी पेड़ का तो वो रोना धोना शुरू कर देती थी and she would not even drink milk that her foster mother and she would bring. She would sob and cry. But now she has gone off with a stranger, trusting the lies of a black-bearded man. She has gone through the wilderness laughing, they say, showing her white teeth like new buds on a palm tree. So this is love poetry of Sangam period, almost 3 centuries before Christ to 1st century after Christ in Tamil. And if you compare this Tamil literature with Sanskrit, you discover that it is far more secular. It talks about war and sex and love. All right, it talks about secular world, and Sanskrit talks about Atma and Paramatma. It goes on and on about dharma and artha, kam, moksha and all that. While Tamil poetry is very earthy, very symbolic, very everyday, using everyday imagery and conventions of flowers and landscapes to communicate and talk about very earthly themes. Right? So you can see the contrast between ancient Tamil and ancient Sanskrit literature as well. Okay, so this is where I want to stop for today. Right? And now only one essay is left, which we will do after the Diwali vacation. Right? 2 essays are left. Tejaswini Niranjana's essay and E.V. Ramakrishnan essay. Clear? हाँ ना क्या है? Clear?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we meet tomorrow with 4/11. Dates have been extended till 21st. So you have 1 more week of vacation. And don't ask me about exams. You can ask the head of the department about that. I have absolutely no clue. I am even more clueless than you. Right? So, okay then. So, see you tomorrow with 4/11.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Right?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
thank you, sir.
Yes. Welcome.